So it appears that Trump has abandoned Ukraine. He's withdrawing all military support from Ukraine. Now, it was actually evident he was going to do that during his fiery bust-up and rage-filled meeting with Vladimir Zelensky at the Oval Office. And there was one particular moment in that exchange where you can see that Trump had really got triggered by something. And that trigger actually tells us a lot about him and how he made this decision and generally makes decisions overall. It goes back to something deep down inside him and came from a very profound place within his psyche. Here it is.
Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
So he was affronted by the idea of being told how he should feel. Something from his past has done that to him, and he cannot stand it. He cannot face being told how he should feel. That is something that clearly presses a button with him, and he clearly reacted in a severe way based on something that's happened in his past, where they have been in emotionally abusive relationships. And we know that that is the relationship he has had because of the information we've received about this from his niece, Mary Trump. She is explaining it.
And during and after the surgeries that were required after the onset of her illness, about 9 months after Robert was born, which, by the way, almost killed her, her absence, both literal and emotional, created a void in the lives of her children, but especially Donald and Robert, who at 2.5 years old and 9 months old, respectively, were the most vulnerable of her children, especially since there was no one else to fill that void left by my grandmother. It is difficult to describe what a tragedy it was for these two very young boys to have their primary caregiver, no matter how imperfect, how withholding, or how selfish she may have been, be replaced by a sociopath, my grandfather.
So as I've mentioned in a previous video, Trump, when he was a baby, didn't get much affection from his mother, and she was absent during important parts of his life. And when he was supposed to be receiving the attention of the parents, instead he had an absent mother and a father who was not at all interested in him. In fact, met his emotions with a response of anger, with a response of disinterest, with a response of agitation and aggression in return. So where a child grows up healthy, it is allowed to experience the full range of emotions. A child will experience a whole range of sometimes extreme emotions, what we consider to be extreme as adults. They'll have temper tantrums, they'll have all sorts of outbursts. And a healthy relationship, a healthy upbringing is one in which they're allowed to do that. And of course, there will be boundaries to be kept, in order to stay safe and well. But aside from that, good parents will allow that range of emotions to be experienced. Now, everybody's on a spectrum because we all have different levels of tolerance. And I myself know that I can sometimes lose it when my children are emotional more than I should, and we all do to different degrees. But in extreme cases, where no emotion is allowed, where they are shut down immediately, where that emotion is met with aggression, where that emotion is met with anger in return or indifference, that can lead to the child being molded, being prevented from feeling. You are told how to feel. You are not allowed to feel. Somebody external is controlling your ability to feel. And that is what a sort of emotionally abusive parenting and emotionally abusive upbringing involves. So Trump rejects and resents anybody who's trying to tell him how to feel, because as a young child, he was told how to feel. Don't feel like that. Be quiet. Stop it. I don't want to hear you. And of course, much worse, aggression in return, actual anger, even more anger in return, to the extent where he feels unable to then express himself. And what happens when this occurs is that it leaves the person frozen in development at that stage. So at whichever stage your development was impaired, was hampered, you remain at that stage for the rest of your life. A part of you stays that age. And so as a result, a part of him has stayed as the raging child. The raging child because it hasn't ever been heard when it needed to be heard. So that raging child continues into adulthood because that development was frozen at that stage. And we see that, of course, all the time with him.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask
Peter,
one
go
other
ahead.
question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's
Mr.
enough.
President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me. That's enough.
What then happens is that when that person becomes a parent, they are then emotionally incontinent because they don't have the ability to control their emotions because they are never allowed to express them as a child. So they're arrested in development at that stage, and they keep, expounding their emotions in the way that Trump does. And that means that when they are raising children, they will behave the same way towards their children that their parents behave towards them, not allowing them to emote either, not allowing them the space to experience a full spectrum of emotions. And as a result, the children become that way too. This is how trauma abuse is inherited through generations. And that's exactly what's happened in the Trump family. And Mary Trump has been very explicit and open about that. But not only is this passing through generations, it's now passing across the world because of Trump's position. And that emotional abuse, that refusal to hear other people's emotion, that refusal to give space to other people's feeling, is where we are now and what is leading to this current situation in which an entire nation fighting for its life, being killed on a regular basis, masses of people being murdered and raped, is being completely ignored now by the American president. Why? Because he does not have space to allow other people's feelings to be heard. He does not have that ability to expand his awareness to any emotions outside his own, because he wasn't given that space himself as a child when he needed it, and now he's just using all the space he can. And so when Zelensky in the Oval Office earnestly, sincerely, almost tearfully shared with him pictures about some of the grotesque abuses that are going on in Ukraine, some of the people who are dying, who have been kidnapped, who have been killed, who have been tortured, he was showing that. He even brought photos to show that, to plead with Trump, that please have empathy for my people, this is what's happening. That got nowhere with Trump because he cannot comprehend any feeling other than his own. And in the end, it had the opposite effect. In the end, Trump didn't want to be anywhere near that. In the same way that his parents didn't want to be near his emotion, he doesn't want to be near this emotion. And the only way to get rid of it is just cut them off. I don't want to be involved with them anymore. It's exactly what happens to Trump's brother Freddie. He ended up being bullied to death by his father. And there's a whole story on that, and Mary Trump has written an amazing book about that. Whenever he brought up his emotion, that would be suppressed to the point where he ended up going into alcohol and drinking himself to death. So that is the response to emotion. Ignore it, suppress it, show aggression towards it. So the emotion that Zelensky brought, that Ukraine brings to America and to the world, is being met with rage, just as his emotion was met with rage. And that rage is now leading to them being cut off and to them being in a desperate situation where, without American support, the killing will now just completely overwhelm the country if America's support goes and Russia can do exactly what it wants. That isn't bringing peace. That is bringing war, death, and slaughter on a mass scale. That will be Trump's legacy. So as a psychiatrist and someone who's politically active, and also write a lot about politics and philosophy and other things, I'm going to be producing videos like this in the long run for some time now, and you'll really help get these videos out to other people by liking and subscribing. So if you can like and subscribe, what will happen is that it will help us with the algorithms on YouTube and bring these videos to more and more people. Would really appreciate this and keep us talking together, building awareness, building an understanding about what's really happening and what we can do to make a change and make things better and turn this story around. Thank you.